the reason why everyone and their mother were sucking shot glasses in order to have lips like Kylie Jenner's in summer 2016. Please bring me back to 2016. An industry not only worth $677.2 billion, but also everyone's mental sanity. Yes, I'm talking about the beauty industry, and more often than not, we blame society for inflicting upon us such unrealistic beauty standards. But let's not discount our agency, because we are the ones fitting into it because we actually like it. Something in our brains lights up whenever we see someone with a shit ton of Botox in their face. Do we like a boob job better because we've been taught to like it, or because it's exploiting something inside of our brains? Well, if your brain wants to understand itself, look no further, because you're in the right place. Hi babies, it's Paula, and welcome back to our channel, where we find answers through neuroscience and psychology. Sometimes the solution is loud and clear, and other times it's just a mess. But regardless of the situation, I'm here to provide you with some interesting tools that will help you understand better how our brains function and we are all structured and how we behave. Because guys, the more I study the field of psychology, the more I ask myself about the roots of the factors that play a role in how we think and view our lives in general. And as I was reading the book A Neuroscientist in the Museum of El Prado, which is the most important museum in Spain, I realized how interesting it is the way our head is predisposed to like exaggerated stuff. This is really relatable to today's day and age because with the help of technology, we've developed different ways, let's just say Photoshop, plastic surgery, makeup, different hairstyle, everything. Every factor that alters the way we naturally are. It's really interesting to see how our brain actually likes it. Bear in mind that the cognitive effect we're going to talk about today was not born in the age of technology, but rather, as with many other cognitive effects, it has had an exponential growth in our eyes. Literally. As I've mentioned previously in this video, we're used to blaming society for our outrageous expectations on beauty. And if I play the devil's advocate here, I will have to argue this is in part due to the attribution bias, which is a cognitive bias that states that we tend to blame our environment for our problems, but we tend to blame other people's problems on their identity, so an intrinsic factor. We can easily understand disinformation as, I'm blaming society for a problem I'm having internally, which would say that I'm blaming society of something I feel insecure about. But is it that true? In psychology, it always depends. Often, factors are not individual variables that shape our thoughts, but rather a net of intertwined factors that feed into each other. It's not nature versus nurture, it is how nature and nurture mesh and work together to shape our thoughts and our reality. So as much as society plays a role in our preferences, desires, expectations, it is safe to say our preferences would not exist if something in our brains didn't deem them as good or worth our attention. But what is that something exactly? Little bracket here, thanks mom, I know you're watching this. Thanks for bringing me this cup. She went to Vienna. Like everyone has a dream place they want to go. My dream place is Vienna. It's the cusp of culture. Let me know if you've been there and how it is, because my mom could only say like good things about it. We see things not for what they are, but based on what we know. That's why we feel deceived whenever we take a picture and we realize that it has nothing to do with what we are actually seeing, which is really interesting, and a video about it is also coming soon. Bear in mind, I'm about to tremendously simplify the act of seeing, and it will do no justice to the precise, detailed, and complex system behind the visual process. And in order to explain it, I think we'll need to get a bit more visual. I brought you here.
Yes, I've seen my hair on that clip, and I'm personally apologizing.
To understand how the act of seeing works. Because we are not agents, and what we see is not a subject, but it's a reinforcing cycle. And now we're gonna learn how. First of all, this is the brain. This is a flower because I don't know how to draw anything else. And this is not a boob, this is an eye, okay? As I've said, we're not here to judge my drawing skills. We're here to judge if I can explain neuroscience or not. So yeah, leave in the comments if you think I can. Anyway, first of all, our brain. Our brain's separated into different regions. Think of it as the world map. Okay, we need to divide it into continents, and the brain's continents are the lobes. And this lobe right here is the temporal lobe. And we have a part right here, which is the inferior temporal gyrus, which is the part of the brain that processes visual stimuli, which is basically the part that tells us what we see. And how do we know what we see? Well, first we receive a stimuli. The retina, this part of the eye, has different types of neurons, which 2% of them, yeah, you've heard it right, only 2% of them, takes the information with color and precision. Which means that 98% of the cells right here don't have color and don't have clarity. The thing is, we cannot send images. So what happens is that our brain doesn't receive an image, but it receives a message, a description of the image. And then, this part of the brain, the inferior temporal gyrus, what it does is understands or reconstructs the image, the flower in this case, not solely in how the flower is. 2% of the flower is sent to the brain, and the brain pairs this with the previous knowledge of what a flower is and develops the flower itself. So yeah, it is safe to say that we don't see things as they are, but we see them based on what we know that they are. And that's what makes me have many existential crises. Because I'm sure that you and I are seeing this marker right here differently. And it is really interesting because I will never know how you see it, and you'll never know how I see it, but we've come to the consensus that we see it equally. The knowledge of the flower, it's not by the flower itself, but a mountain of information that goes building over time. That's why over time it's much easier for us to see things and recognize stuff. When you're a kid, it is harder for you to recognize information or flowers in this case. If you only have seen 2 roses in your life, it's going to be harder for you to decipher whether something is a rose or not. But if you're very knowledgeable and you've seen millions of roses in your life, you're going to detect a rose easily. That's why there's people who say, I should have learned French when I was younger because I had it easier. Yeah, of course it was easier for you to learn a language 10 years ago because you had more neuroplasticity, therefore the building up of knowledge was much easier for you. To sum up, our brain works like AI. We see something. Part of this information is sent to our brain, and our brain, what it does is work like ChatGPT. You send a prompt, and that prompt must be an image. I don't know, you say, make me a white flower with 5 petals. I don't know. And the brain decides to develop it. A white flower with 5 petals. Does he only take this information? No, he also takes the previous information he's had, or it has had. So yeah, our brains work like AI. Great! People tell you, if you don't like memorizing stuff, don't go into law. With all that said, we should go back to our regular set. In the inferior temporal lobe, we've got different types of neurons that determine and categorize different features. For instance, we have face cells, which automatically recognize faces, whether it's a human face or an emoji, doesn't matter. And we also have special ones for more specific features like eyes or lips. And this ponders the question, if we have neurons that automatically decipher what a face is, it must mean we are born with the knowledge of what a face is, right? Wrong. We're born with, aka is codified in the set of genes we have, the set of rules we use to constructing objects and putting them on shelves. So the organizational skills, we're born with those, and we are wired to do so. It's innate, especially because we need to accumulate knowledge. Otherwise, thinking would be too much of a task. This helps identify our visual lexic, which is just the bank of images we have in our heads. Practice makes perfection, and that is why we need to automate our actions and views so we can become more aware of our surroundings. Therefore, learn to navigate the world with more agility. Quoting the book, every act of perception is an act of creation, and every act of memory is an act of imagination. We are biologically made to recognize stuff, but we don't know exactly what. Throughout our first years on Earth, we build shelves on which we will later put the information we encounter. And we will also acquire a basic sense of what things are. For instance, a 3-year-old may know what a cat is, but then the second they are faced with a lion, they might think it's a huge cat. We see things and categorize them based on what we previously know. Why would the brain deem a lion to be a cat, even if the former is disproportionately much bigger? The answer, my friends, lies in the neurons themselves. We're wired to like distortions. Our neurons literally get more excited to distorted images. We have different types of neurons, like different types of, for instance, mouth cells, that some of them get super excited when you see a huge mouth and some of them get super excited when you see a small one. It's really relative to the person. The neuron's response is not limited to the shapes and distances of the faces we see daily, but extends beyond that. We're prepared to extend reality for the better or for the worse. In some cases, the bigger the feature, the more excited, and in others, the smaller, the more excited the cells will be. The book gives a very good example of an experiment conducted in the 50s. I know it's a bit old, and some would even dare to say it could be outdated, but it is worth mentioning. Researchers knew baby seagulls followed their moms everywhere and wanted to understand what trait did the mothers have that made the babies have the amount of attachment they had to the mother. And so they found out that the secret lies on the back of the mother. They have a red dot, and that's the trait that makes the babies follow them. With that information, the researchers decided to show different things to the babies in order to see their reactions, to see if something could imitate their mother. They showed a normal bag, no answer. A white stick, supposed to resemble a bag, even less of an answer. The same stick with a red dot, the babies almost thought it was their mother. And the same bag with 3 dots, the babies went crazy in love for that shit. But as always, the response depends. It depends on our previous knowledge of the feature, which is highly affected by our environment, and other factors like our predisposition for beauty and harmony, our different cultures, and the never-ending race to the subjective beauty play a huge role in what we deem as desirable. And even if it looks unnatural, our brains alter reality and are insatiable when we visually like something. Here goes to show how most animals are actually quite irrational when perceiving the world. Now the question is, which dotted sticks have you been mistaking for bags? Well, babies, I hope you enjoyed this video and you've learned a lot about the perception. I love the art of seeing and the neuroscience behind it. Let me know if you want a video more on the psychology side of beauty standards, because yeah, it does affect our brains a lot, not only in a physiological sense but also in a psychological one, in a more abstract way. Let me know if you like this content, which leans more towards the physiological side, by giving it a like or just commenting what did you feel about it. And yeah, just bear in mind that this book is amazing. If you understand Spanish, I highly recommend the book Un Neurocientífico en el Museo del Prado. And yeah, if you don't understand Spanish, don't worry, because I will be doing a series in how our sight affects the way we see the world. So yeah, after my yap of the week, have a nice